We need to be clear on one thing. The amount of money involved in moving us to a decarbonized economy, to a circular economy, it's enormous. We should have no illusions this cannot be solved by public money. It has to be the markets, and this has been remarkable about your foundation. You've always put the economics, the markets at the core of it. It won't work. More than 50% of the assets we manage are retirement funds. So these are the funds needed for teachers, policemen, firemen across the world, many in the United States. There's no way we can invest that money into a politically very risky area.
I guess you're caught between the balance of risk of business as usual
exactly,
and risk of investing, and there has to become that point at which things tip over. And we talk a lot about the absolute need to make the economics work for a circular economy, and we see that in three areas: the business-led innovation, and we've talked more about more sectorial and regionally, but the business-led innovation, the fact that we need collaboration across value chains, and with plastics, you just heard us mention plastics, you need the entire system to shift in order to solve the plastic pollution problem, and that's massive investment, as you said, in emerging markets. And then that third part, enabling policy. And when you get to that point of saying, the balance tipping between the risk of carrying on as we are and the risk of investing in emerging markets, I imagine that enabling policy is something you look for to try to de-risk to some extent those new investments, which we all know have to happen.
Yeah, 100%. And at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the rich world is going to have to make a decision that it wants this capital to go where it's needed the most. And they'll have to find ways to de-risk these investments. Otherwise, private capital will not flow, right? And I think we need to be clear on one thing. The amount of money involved in moving us to a decarbonized economy, to a circular economy, it's enormous. We should have no illusions this cannot be solved by public money. It has to be the markets, and this has been remarkable about your foundation. You've always put the economics, the markets at the core of it. It won't work without private capital. We have to mobilize private capital. You need two things for that. You need a price incentive, and then you need the policies that induce private actors to actually allocate the money where it needs to go. In a way, that the tragedy of what's happening around inflation, the price shocks, the war, to some extent, as I said, that creates a pretty strong price signal. I mean, if you thought transition to net zero was an economically viable story at $60 a barrel, it's certainly going to look that way at 120. But it's not the only thing. You also need the policies to align. The market only works if you have the policies and the incentives in place. We should have no illusion. The markets are not perfect. I learned this the hard way during the financial crisis. So unless we create the incentives around it, this is not going to work. And the big question is, we are in a moment of crisis in the world. Does that create a moment of opportunity from the policy side? Or are we going to see basically the political side backing off and pursuing other priorities first? And if that happens, then I think we get into a very bad place.